The desert's mercy. The crimson sands of Proxima 7 stretched endlessly beneath 3 setting suns, their merciless heat turning the wasteland into an inferno. Naira stumbled forward, her crystalline skin dulled from its usual sapphire luster to a pale, sickly blue. Her silver hair, once flowing like liquid moonlight, now hung in matted strands around her gaunt face. 6 days had passed since her ship crashed in this forsaken desert, and each passing hour drew her closer to death. She hadn't expected to survive the crash, let alone the harsh desert conditions. The Syndicate's attack had caught her by surprise, forcing her to make an emergency landing on this barely habitable planet. Now, as she trudged through the shifting sands, she wondered if a quick death in space might have been more merciful. A violent cough racked her body, sending her to her knees. The planet's atmosphere was breathable, but barely. Each intake of air felt like swallowing needles, and the little water she had salvaged from her ship's emergency supplies had run out 2 days ago. As she knelt in the sand, watching her trembling hands sink into the crimson grains, a bitter laugh escaped her cracked lips. To think that she, once a celebrated healer among her people, would die alone on a desert world. The sound of engines cut through her delirium. At first, she dismissed it as another hallucination, like the phantom oases she'd been seeing for the past day. But the sound grew louder, more distinct. Naira forced her head up, her violet eyes struggling to focus through the heat waves distorting the air. A small ship descended from the clouds, its sleek form unlike anything she'd seen before. Not Syndicate design, definitely not from her home world of Lysaria. The vessel touched down 100 meters away, kicking up clouds of red sand. Naira tried to stand but found her legs wouldn't respond. After days of walking, her body had finally given up. The ship's hatch opened with a pneumatic hiss, and a figure emerged. Through her blurring vision, Naira made out the shape of a human male, dressed in practical desert gear. He approached cautiously, medical scanner in hand. She'd heard of humans before, their species was relatively new to interstellar travel, but they'd already gained a reputation for being unpredictable. Some called them dangerous. Others, invaluable allies. "Hold still," the human said, his voice carrying a gentle authority. "I'm Dr. Tristan Wade. My sensors picked up your life signs." He knelt beside her, running the scanner over her body. His eyes, a deep brown that reminded her of Lysarian amber, widened slightly at the readings. "You're severely dehydrated. How long have you been out here?" Naira tried to speak, but her throat was too dry. She held up 6 trembling fingers instead. 6 days in this heat. Tristan shook his head, already reaching for his medical kit. "You're either incredibly lucky or incredibly stubborn. Probably both." He pressed a hydration patch against her neck, and almost immediately, Naira felt moisture beginning to spread through her tissues. The relief was so intense she nearly passed out. "Easy now," Tristan steadied her with a firm but gentle grip. "Too much too fast could shock your system. Let's get you to my ship. I have better equipment there." He paused, studying her face. "Can you tell me your name?" "Naira," she managed to whisper. "I'm a healer." A smile touched Tristan's lips. "A fellow medical professional?" "Well, Naira, today you get to be the patient." He helped her to her feet, supporting most of her weight as they made their way to his ship. Each step was agony, but Naira forced herself to keep moving. She'd survived 6 days in the desert, she could manage 100 meters. Inside the ship, the cool air felt like a blessing against her burned skin. Tristan helped her onto a medical bed, immediately beginning to hook up more sophisticated monitoring equipment. As he worked, Naira noticed the organized chaos of his ship, clearly a mobile medical facility, but one adapted for frontier worlds. Medical supplies shared space with survival gear, and she spotted several weapons carefully stored in locked cabinets. "You're not just a doctor," she observed, her voice slightly stronger thanks to the hydration treatment. Tristan glanced up from adjusting in 4 line. Out here, you can't afford to be just one thing. I go where I'm needed. Sometimes that means patching up miners on remote colonies, sometimes it means evacuating refugees from war zones. He connected the four, and Naira felt cool relief spreading through her arm. Speaking of which, want to tell me what brought you to this particular slice of paradise? Naira closed her eyes, memories of laser fire and explosions flashing through her mind. I was running. Aren't we all? Tristan's voice held no judgment, only understanding. Well, you're safe for now. Get some rest. We can talk more when you're stronger. As consciousness began to fade, Naira found herself studying her unlikely savior. Humans were supposed to be unpredictable, dangerous even. Yet this one had risked his own safety to save a stranger in the desert. Perhaps there was more to their species than the story suggested. The last thing she saw before sleep claimed her was Tristan checking her vital signs, his expression focused and professional. In that moment, despite everything she'd lost, despite the dangers still pursuing her, Naira felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. Trust in strangers. Naira awoke to the gentle hum of medical equipment. Her body still ached, but the burning thirst that had dominated her existence for the past 6 days had subsided. Through the viewport beside her bed, she could see that Proxima VII's 3 suns had set, leaving the desert bathed in starlight. Tristan sat at his monitoring station, reviewing data on a holographic display. He noticed her stirring and swiveled his chair to face her. Your cellular regeneration rate is remarkable, he said, gesturing to the readings. Most species would take weeks to recover from that level of dehydration. You'll be back on your feet in days. Lysarians evolved from creatures that could survive long periods without water, Naira explained, her voice stronger now. Though I wouldn't recommend testing those limits. She attempted to sit up, and Tristan moved quickly to assist her, adjusting the bed's position. Lysarian? He frowned slightly. I thought your people rarely left their home system. Something about maintaining cultural purity? There was no accusation in his voice, only curiosity. Naira's fingers traced the edge of her blanket, her crystalline skin catching the starlight. We're not supposed to leave. Contact with other species is heavily restricted. She met his gaze. That's part of why I ran. Tristan pulled up a chair, his expression attentive but not pushing. I've treated enough refugees to know when someone's carrying heavy burdens. Want to talk about it? For a moment, Naira hesitated. Trust didn't come easily to her people, it was seen as a weakness, a potential breach in their carefully maintained isolation. But this human had saved her life, had treated her with kindness when he had no obligation to do so. I was part of the medical council, she began. We're responsible for maintaining the health of our population, but also for ensuring genetic purity. Any Lysarian showing signs of mutation or contamination is. She swallowed hard, terminated. Tristan's face darkened. Eugenics. I couldn't do it anymore, Naira continued. When they brought me a child, barely 5 cycles old, marked for termination because of a minor genetic variance that actually improved her immune system. She closed her eyes, remembering. I helped her escape. Got her to a sympathetic trader who promised to take her somewhere safe. But the syndicate, our enforcement branch, found out. And they came after you, Tristan finished. He stood, walking to one of his locked cabinets and retrieving a small metal flask. Here. It's not exactly fine dining, but it's better than intravenous fluids. The liquid inside was sweet, with a slight tang that reminded Naira of fruits from her homeworld. She took another sip, savoring the sensation. Why did you save me, Dr. Wade? You must have known I was running from something. Helping me could put you at risk. Tristan leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. Out here on the frontier, we have a saying, humanity thrives not because we're the strongest or the smartest, but because we're stubborn enough to help each other when it matters. He smiled slightly. And please, call me Tristan. We're a bit past formalities. A warning light flashed on his console, drawing both their attention. Tristan moved to check it, his posture tensing. Speaking of the syndicate, looks like we've got company. Long-range sensors picked up 3 ships entering the system. Military configuration. Naira tried to stand, but Tristan gently pushed her back down. You're not fully recovered. They'll kill you, she protested. The syndicate doesn't show mercy to those who interfere with their missions. Good thing I'm not planning to be merciful either. Tristan moved swiftly through the ship, activating systems and checking weapons. This isn't my first dance with people who think their laws are more important than lives. You don't understand, Naira called after him. Lasarian technology is generations ahead of human capabilities. Their ships rely heavily on crystalline computing cores, similar to your biological structure, Tristan finished, surprising her. Which means they're vulnerable to certain radiation frequencies that wouldn't affect human tech. I did my homework on your people when I picked up your life signs. He returned to her bedside, now wearing a combat harness over his medical gear. I've spent 10 years on the frontier, Naira. Helping people escape from situations exactly like yours. The syndicate isn't the first group to think their genetic or cultural purity matters more than basic decency, and they won't be the last. The ship's engines hummed to life, and through the viewport, Naira could see the stars beginning to shift. What's your plan? First, we're going to show your friends why humans have a reputation for being unpredictable, Tristan said, sliding into the pilot's seat. Then we're going to get you somewhere safe. I know people who help refugees start new lives, build new identities. Why? Naira asked softly. Why risk everything for a stranger? Tristan's hands moved across the controls, plotting their course. Because someone once did the same for me. Because every time we choose to help instead of hurt, we make the universe a little bit better. He glanced back at her. And because I've spent enough time treating victims of oppression to know that change only happens when good people stand up and say, no more. The ship lifted off from Proxima VII's surface, rising through the atmosphere as the first hints of dawn painted the horizon. Behind them, 3 syndicate vessels appeared as bright points of light against the stars. But for the first time since she'd fled her homeworld, Naira felt something stronger than fear, determination. This human, this supposed primitive from a species her people dismissed as barely civilized, had shown more humanity than centuries of Lasarian purity. As they accelerated toward the system's edge, Naira made a silent promise. If they survived what was coming, she would find a way to repay this trust. And perhaps together, they could help others escape the chains of tradition that had bound her people for so long. Shadows of the past. Space warped around Tristan's ship as they pushed through the outer edges of the Proxima system, the pursuing syndicate vessels growing larger in their wake. Naira gripped her medical bed, fighting waves of nausea as the ship's inertial dampeners struggled to compensate for their evasive maneuvers. They're charging weapons, she warned, reading the distinctive energy signatures on Tristan's displays. The lead ship, that's the arbitrator's vessel. Commander Voss. Her voice caught slightly on the name. Tristan's hands danced across the controls, sending them into a spiral that barely avoided the first volley of crystalline energy beams. Friend of yours? He was my partner on the medical council, Naira admitted. Before I discovered what he was really doing with our genetic research. The memory made her skin crawl. He wasn't just eliminating mutations, he was creating them, testing the limits of our genetic manipulation technology on innocent subjects. Charming guy. Tristan's voice was tight with concentration as he guided them through a field of stellar debris. Hold on tight, this might get rough. The ship shuddered as a glancing hit caught their rear shields. Warning lights flashed across the console, but Tristan remained focused. You said Lasarian tech was generations ahead of ours, he called back to Naira. Want to put that knowledge to good use? Understanding flickered in her violet eyes. She forced herself up, making her way to the co-pilot's seat on unsteady legs. What do you need? Their shield frequencies. If they're based on crystalline technology like the rest of their systems, they must have vulnerabilities. Naira's fingers moved across the unfamiliar human controls, adapting quickly. Lasarian shields operate on a resonance pattern tied to our biological structure. It's why our weapons can penetrate them while staying harmless to our own people. She paused, a plan forming. But if we could generate the exact inverse of that frequency, we could shatter their shields like glass, Tristan finished, a grim smile touching his lips. Can you calculate the pattern? Another blast rocked the ship, and Naira's hands tightened on the console. I'll need access to your weapons systems. The modifications won't be elegant, but elegant doesn't matter out here. Just get it done. As Naira worked, Tristan kept them moving, using the debris field to their advantage. The Syndicate ships were larger, more powerful, but also less maneuverable. Each piece of twisted metal and rock became cover, each burst of solar radiation a chance to mask their signature. Commander Voss to the human vessel, a cold voice cut through their communications. Return the fugitive immediately, and we may show mercy. Continue to harbor her, and you will face the full consequences of interfering in Lasarian affairs. Tristan glanced at Naira, who had frozen at the sound of her former partner's voice. Friends got away with words, he muttered. Then, louder, this is Dr. Tristan Wade. I've got a counter-offer, turn around now, and I won't have to demonstrate why messing with human doctors is a bad idea. You're harboring a criminal, Voss replied, his tone dripping with disdain. She betrayed her people, violated our most sacred laws. I betrayed nothing, Naira cut in, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. You betrayed everything our people stand for. Healing, preservation, protection, you twisted all of it for your experiments. The modifications were necessary, Voss hissed. Our people are stagnating, weakening through isolation. My work would have made us stronger, perfect. Your work killed innocent people, Naira shot back. Children. And you called it progress. Her fingers flew across the console, making final adjustments. Tristan, I've got it. The inverse frequency, we can fire it through your main deflector. Do it, Tristan ordered, swinging the ship around to face their pursuers. Let's show the commander what real progress looks like. Naira activated the modified weapons array, sending a pulse of energy that exactly matched the inverse of Lasarian shield harmonics. The effect was instantaneous. The pursuing ship's shields didn't just fail, they shattered, the crystalline matrix fracturing like spider webs across space. Impossible, Voss breathed, genuine fear creeping into his voice. Our technology can be understood, Naira finished. Can be challenged. Just like your precious laws. Tristan didn't waste the advantage, targeting precise shots at the now vulnerable ship's propulsion systems. One by one, their engines failed, leaving them drifting helplessly in space. This isn't over, Voss snarled through the failing comm link. The Syndicate will never stop hunting you. Both of you. You're right about one thing, Tristan replied calmly. It's not over. Because now we know how to fight back. He cut the communication and turned to Naira. Think you can transmit that shield frequency to every free colony and independent ship in the sector? A slow smile spread across Naira's face. The Syndicate's greatest weapon has always been fear. Take that away. And suddenly they don't look so invincible. Tristan plotted a course away from the disabled ships. I know some people who'd be very interested in this information. People who've lost family to the Syndicate's purity programs. Naira stared out at the stars, feeling the weight of decades of oppression beginning to lift. I never thought I'd see them vulnerable. Never thought anyone would be willing to stand against them. Get used to it, Tristan said softly. Humans have a bad habit of standing up to bullies, no matter how powerful they think they are. He paused, studying her profile. You know they'll send others after us. Let them come, Naira replied, surprised by her own conviction. I'm done running. Done hiding. She turned to face him. If you'll help me, I want to fight back. Really fight back. Help others escape like I did. Tristan's smile was answer enough. As their ship accelerated into faster-than-light travel, leaving the humbled syndicate vessels behind, both felt the shift in their relationship. They were no longer just doctor and patient, rescuer and refugee. They were partners in something larger than themselves, a chance to challenge an empire built on fear and false purity. The stars streaked past, carrying them toward an uncertain future. But for the first time in years, Naira felt truly free. And in Tristan's quiet determination, she saw something her people had forgotten, that true strength came not from isolation and purity, but from the courage to stand together against injustice. Breaking chains. The refugee camp on Navas Prime sprawled across the moon's rocky surface, a collection of prefabricated shelters and repurposed cargo containers housing those who had fled persecution across the galaxy. Tristan's ship touched down near the medical facility, kicking up clouds of gray dust. Inside the camp's makeshift command center, Naira stood before a group of resistance leaders, her crystalline skin catching the artificial light. 3 weeks had passed since their escape from the Syndicate, and in that time, she and Tristan had helped spread the shield-breaking frequency to every resistance cell willing to fight back. The Syndicate's power relies on their technological superiority, she explained, projecting a hologram of their shield matrix. But their weakness is their pride. They never imagined anyone could understand their systems well enough to counter them. A scarred woman wearing a captain's insignia leaned forward. We've received reports of successful shield breaches across 3 sectors. Your frequency works, Naira. But the Syndicate is adapting. They're developing new shield configurations. Let them, Tristan interjected from his position by the door. Every resource they spend on defense is one they can't use to hunt down more refugees. He caught Naira's eye, giving her a subtle nod of encouragement. The meeting was interrupted by urgent footsteps. A young resistance fighter burst into the room, face flushed with exertion. Multiple ships just dropped out of FTL at the system's edge. Lysarian signatures. At least 20 vessels. The room erupted in controlled chaos. The captain began barking orders, coordinating evacuation procedures. But Naira stood frozen, her mind racing. 20 ships. The Syndicate has never committed that many resources to a single operation. They're desperate. Tristan moved to her side, already checking his medical kit and weapons. You showed them they're vulnerable. Now they're overcompensating, trying to crush the resistance before more worlds learn their weakness. This is our fault, Naira whispered. We brought them here. Tristan grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to meet his gaze. No. They were always going to come. The only difference is now these people have a fighting chance. His brown eyes held a fierce determination. But we need to get the refugees out first. The evacuation began immediately. Transport ships that had been hidden in underground hangars emerged to ferry civilians to safety. Resistance fighters took up defensive positions, determined to buy time for the evacuation. Naira and Tristan worked together, helping load medical supplies and critical patients onto the transports. Incoming. The warning came just seconds before the first bombardment. The Syndicate ships had reached attack range, their weapons lighting up the moon's thin atmosphere. Despite their compromised shields, their sheer numbers made them formidable. Naira helped a young Lysarian child into a transport, her heart aching at the fear in the girl's eyes. She was reminded of the child she had saved, the one whose escape had started all of this. How many more? She asked Tristan as he rushed past with medical supplies. 2 more transports, he replied grimly. But they'll never make it with those ships in orbit. He paused, a dangerous idea forming. Unless we give them something else to shoot at, Naira finished, reading his expression. Your ship's medical bay, we could modify the regeneration field to amplify the shield-breaking frequency. Create one massive pulse, Tristan nodded. Might take out their entire fleet's shields at once. It would also overload your ship's systems, Naira pointed out. We'd have no way out. A near miss from orbital fire sent them diving for cover. When the dust settled, Tristan's face was set with determination. Then we'd better make it count. They raced to his ship, even as more bombardment rained down around them. Inside, Naira immediately began modifying the medical equipment while Tristan prepared the ship for what might be its final flight. The regeneration field was never meant to handle this kind of power, Naira warned, rerouting crucial systems. We'll have maybe 30 seconds after activation before the whole thing overloads. Then we time it perfectly, Tristan replied, guiding the ship up through the atmosphere. Wait until we're in the middle of their fleet. The ship shuddered as they took fire, their own shields rapidly depleting. Through the viewport, Naira could see the massive syndicate fleet spreading out before them, their crystalline ships glowing with deadly purpose. Commander Voss is going to be disappointed, Tristan managed a grim smile. He's not even here to see this. Oh, he's here, Naira's voice was cold as she recognized one of the ships. That's his flagship. He would never trust anyone else to lead this attack. They dove between enemy vessels, taking hits but staying mobile. Laserian weapons fire filled space around them, each near miss bringing them closer to destruction. But they only needed one shot. Now. Naira activated the modified regeneration field, channeling its power through the ship's deflector array. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then space itself seemed to ripple as the inverse frequency pulse expanded outward in a massive wave. The effect was spectacular. Every syndicate ship's shield shattered simultaneously, the crystalline matrix failing catastrophically. Some vessels lost power entirely, their systems overloaded by the feedback. Resistance fleet, you have your opening. Tristan broadcast on all frequencies. Get those transports out now. Through their failing view screen, they watched as the refugee ships streaked past, escaping through the gaps in the syndicate fleet's formation. But their own ship was dying, systems overloading one by one. Tristan, Naira's voice was urgent as warning lights flooded the cockpit. We have to. Her words were cut off by a massive impact. The last thing she saw was Tristan reaching for her as the world exploded in blinding light. New horizons. Consciousness returned slowly, accompanied by the familiar hum of medical equipment. Naira opened her eyes to find herself in an unfamiliar recovery room. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating warm wooden walls, a stark contrast to the sterile environments of her past. Welcome back, a tired but relieved voice said beside her. Tristan sat in a chair by her bed, looking battered but very much alive. His right arm was in a regenerative cast, and fresh scars marked his face. How? Naira's voice was hoarse. The ship was breaking apart. Turns out we weren't the only ones with a rescue plan. Tristan smiled. Remember that resistance captain? She had a strike team ready to board Voss's flagship. When our pulse took down the shields, they made their move. Managed to grab us in a tractor beam right before our ship went critical. Naira tried to sit up, wincing at the pain that shot through her body. Voss? In custody, along with most of his command staff. The resistance found his research files. Tristan's expression darkened. All the evidence of his experiments, the genetic manipulation programs, everything. It's being broadcast across Laserian space as we speak. A complex mix of emotions washed over Naira, relief, vindication, and an unexpected sadness for her people's shattered illusions. The Syndicate is falling apart, Tristan finished. Without their technological advantage, without the fear they used to maintain control, the whole system is crumbling. Reformers within Lasarian society are finally speaking out. Change is coming, Naira. Real change. She absorbed this information, looking around the room more carefully. Where are we? Earth, Tristan replied, a hint of pride in his voice. My homeworld. Specifically, the International Refugee Medical Center in New Zealand. I figured after all this time helping others heal, you might want to learn some new approaches to medicine. Naira stared at him, understanding slowly dawning. You want me to stay? To work here? If you want to. Tristan stood, moving to open the window. Fresh air carried the scent of ocean and growing things. Earth's becoming a hub for refugee rehabilitation and cross-species medical training. Your knowledge of Lasarian healing techniques, combined with your experience. He shrugged. We could help a lot of people together. Naira closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of Earth's sun on her face. It was so different from the harsh light of Proxima 7 where they'd first met, or the artificial illumination of Lasarian medical facilities. This light felt like hope. The girl, she said suddenly, opening her eyes. The child I helped escape, the one that started all of this. Did anyone ever? Tristan's smile widened. Actually, I have someone you should meet. He moved to the door, opening it to reveal a small figure hovering uncertainly in the hallway. The child who entered was unmistakably Lasarian, but her crystalline skin showed the subtle variations that had once marked her for purification. She looked healthy, happy, and very much alive. Her name is Luna now, Tristan explained softly. She's been living with a refugee family here on Earth. When I mentioned I'd found you. Luna approached Naira's bed cautiously. You saved me, she said simply. I remember. Tears slid down Naira's cheeks, catching the sunlight like diamonds. You're safe, she whispered. You're really safe. We all are, Luna replied with the simple wisdom of children. And now you can help others, like the human doctor helped you. Naira reached out, taking Luna's small hand in hers. The child's genetic variations were obvious to her medical training, and absolutely beautiful. This was what healing should be about, preserving life in all its diverse forms, not enforcing some artificial standard of purity. She looked up at Tristan, who watched them with quiet satisfaction. You knew, she accused gently. You knew she was here all along. I had a hunch, he admitted. The traitor who helped her escape was an old friend. When I found you in the desert. He shrugged. Let's just say I believe the universe has a way of bringing the right people together at the right time. Luna tugged at Naira's hand. Will you tell me about Lasaria? About what it was like before? The good parts. I'd like that, Naira smiled. And maybe you can tell me about Earth. About growing up free. As Luna settled in to talk, Tristan moved toward the door. I'll let you two catch up. Got some patients to check on. He paused in the doorway. But Naira? Welcome home. Watching him go, Naira felt the last pieces of her old life fall away. She had lost her position, her status, her world, but she had gained something far more precious. A chance to heal not just bodies but spirits. A chance to help others find the freedom she had found. Through the window, Earth's sky stretched endlessly blue, promising new horizons and possibilities. Luna's excited voice filled the room with stories of her new life, while in the distance, Naira could hear the sounds of the medical center, people of all species working together to help those in need. She had started her journey as a fugitive, running from everything she had ever known. But here, in this unexpected place, with these remarkable humans who valued compassion over purity, difference over conformity, she had found her true purpose. And she wasn't running anymore. She was home.